Welcome to our channel. We're so glad you've joined us today for a brand new story that's sure to captivate you. Whether you're tuning in from a cozy corner of the world or from somewhere far away, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on our next exciting tale coming your way tomorrow. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to share more unforgettable stories with you. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey. How a major underestimated the Royal Guard, a clash of military methods. Captain Ryan Mitchell, a seasoned U.S. Army officer, stepped out of the sleek black SUV at the Tower of London, his boots hitting the cold stone ground with authority. His mission was clear: assess the security of this historic landmark. But he was skeptical about one thing: the Royal Guard. As the morning mist clung to the ancient walls of the tower, Mitchell glanced at the ceremonial soldiers, standing perfectly still in their bright scarlet uniforms. To him, they seemed like an outdated relic of a bygone era, their rigid posture and unmoving stance nothing more than a display for tourists. The Tower of London, a place of rich history and tradition, stood proudly in the heart of London, housing the crown jewels and centuries of secrets. But as Mitchell surveyed the perimeter, he couldn't help but think about the vulnerabilities these guards represented. This is more like a military museum than a modern security operation, he muttered to his colleague, Captain Rodriguez. He had seen firsthand how unpredictable threats could be and how modern security operations had to adapt quickly, constantly evolving. In his mind, the guards' fixed positions, standing like statues in front of the jewel house, made them a perfect target for any hostile forces. He had a reputation for unconventional methods, having revolutionized hostage extractions and neutralized dangerous cells with a speed few could match. Mitchell's mind raced as he walked along the path, mentally noting what he saw as weak points in the security plan. These predictable patterns were easy to calculate, he thought, and that's exactly what today's enemies would exploit. These guards aren't just statues, Major, Lieutenant Worthington, the British liaison, corrected him. He quickly reassured Mitchell that the Royal Guards were fully operational soldiers, trained for any situation. But Mitchell was unmoved. Today's exercise will expose those weaknesses, he said firmly, his eyes scanning the area, already seeing how easily the guards could be compromised. As Mitchell continued his assessment, one thing was clear. His mission wasn't just about finding vulnerabilities. It was about proving that the traditional guard system was no match for the unpredictable threats of the modern world. Ethan Stone, a 29-year-old Royal Guard at the Tower of London, stood still, his gaze fixed forward as Captain Mitchell's team moved around him, assessing every inch of the area. The cold mist that clung to the ancient stone walls seemed to intensify the stillness, but Ethan was unshaken. His scarlet uniform, sharp and immaculate, stood out against the gray morning. It was a striking contrast to the modern security systems that buzzed quietly in the background. Systems Captain Mitchell had already begun to question. Yet Ethan remained unmoved, an unmoving sentry at his post, just as he had been trained. Mitchell's skepticism of the Royal Guard had only grown since his arrival, and now, standing in the presence of Ethan's unwavering discipline, he couldn't help but mentally note every flaw he thought he saw. "This is a perfect spot for a sniper," Mitchell muttered to Lieutenant Rodriguez, tapping his tablet as he surveyed the area. Ethan's position, standing for hours at a time, exposed him to threats from every angle: vulnerable, predictable, and stationary. The Major's mind was already working overtime, planning the penetration test he would soon carry out, ready to prove his point that these guards, despite their apparent training, were no match for modern threats. But Ethan had seen this before. He had stood his post during terrorist alerts, emergency drills, and even high-profile royal visits. His position was more than just a symbolic gesture. It was a calculated choice by the Royal Guard, one that had purpose beyond its visual appearance. Though Mitchell dismissed it as ceremonial, Ethan knew the weight of his role. His every motion, every breath was calculated, an essential element of a larger integrated system of security. What Mitchell saw as vulnerability was, in reality, a carefully crafted method of defense. As Mitchell approached, his voice cut through the air, sharp and demanding. This position is a liability, he said, his eyes scanning Ethan's unmoving form. You're standing here, in plain view, without any awareness of your surroundings. Any competent threat could take you out in seconds. But Ethan didn't flinch. His eyes stayed fixed forward, unyielding. Major, Ethan's voice rang out with precision. I'm aware of every movement around me. His calm demeanor contrasted with Mitchell's impatience. Captain Mitchell stood at a distance, his eyes fixed on Ethan Stone, the unmoving royal guard. The morning mist swirled around the Tower of London, but Mitchell's thoughts were far from the beauty of the scene before him. His mind raced with the flaws he believed he had already spotted. These guards aren't trained for real threats, Mitchell muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. He had seen the power of unpredictability in his line of work, and here, in front of him, he saw only predictability. To Mitchell, the Royal Guard's rigid stance was a glaring vulnerability. As Ethan remained perfectly still, the same soldier who had been standing guard for hours, his silence was the perfect contrast to Mitchell's growing frustration. The Major was determined to prove that the Royal Guard's ceremonial role was more about tradition than modern security. This wasn't just a test of the Guards. It was a challenge to everything Mitchell had come to believe about military operations. He had dealt with high-stakes situations before. Extraction missions, hostage negotiations, even active combat. But standing in front of a statue-like soldier, Mitchell couldn't shake the feeling that this security system was a disaster waiting to happen. I'm going to expose these weaknesses, Mitchell muttered, more to himself, his fingers tapping on the tablet screen. He turned to Lieutenant Rodriguez. We're going to run a penetration test, see how long it takes before this security system is compromised. Rodriguez gave a hesitant nod, but didn't argue. They knew Mitchell's reputation, his unconventional methods, but this was different. This was the Royal Guard, a symbol of British tradition. Yet Mitchell couldn't shake the thought. These guards, standing motionless, were exactly what modern threats would exploit. Mitchell's plan was simple. Simulate a threat and see how long it took for Ethan, or anyone for that matter, to react. He knew that the predictability of a stationary position made it an easy target. A sniper could take out the guard in seconds, or worse, a coordinated attack could disable the entire perimeter. He felt the tension rise as he started moving his team into position. The simulation was about to begin. Ethan, however, didn't show any sign of movement. His eyes remained forward, scanning his surroundings with a soldier's focus that Mitchell didn't see. As the test began, Mitchell couldn't help but feel a rush of doubt. Was he about to prove his point? Or had he underestimated the discipline and purpose of the Royal Guard? The tension in the air thickened as the next phase of Mitchell's test loomed closer. As Mitchell's team set the stage for the penetration test, the air felt thick with anticipation. Ethan Stone, still standing motionless at his post, was completely unaware of the simulated threat closing in on him. To Mitchell, it was all part of proving a point. Modern security systems couldn't afford to rely on traditional methods, and today's test would expose those weaknesses. He had meticulously placed his team around the perimeter, setting up small devices designed to simulate a hostile situation. A sniper, a hidden bomb, maybe even a coordinated attack. Mitchell was determined to make it clear. This guard, this position, was vulnerable. But as the scenario unfolded, Mitchell's confidence began to waver. He moved from one corner of the tower's courtyard to the other, watching with a keen eye. His team moved quickly and strategically, mimicking hostile forces, but Ethan remained unfazed, his posture unchanged. It was as though he was completely aware of the situation, yet his stance didn't betray a hint of alarm. Mitchell stopped in his tracks, his mind racing. He had anticipated this test to be a clear demonstration of what was wrong with the Royal Guard's setup. Instead, what he was seeing was not a weak, static position, but a man with an unshakable focus, absorbing everything around him without ever moving an inch. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Ethan spoke, his voice cutting through the thick silence that hung between them. Major, I've been aware of every movement around me for the last 5 minutes. His words, though calm, carried an undeniable authority. Ethan's eyes didn't shift from his position as he continued. I'm not just standing here for show. This position is integrated into a much larger security system. I may not move, but that doesn't mean I'm unaware. Mitchell felt a jolt of realization course through him. He had underestimated the complexity of the Royal Guard's role. Ethan's motionless presence wasn't a flaw. It was a tactical decision, a part of a larger, integrated system of security that Mitchell hadn't fully understood. The guard's immobility was not a vulnerability. It was a deliberate strategy to divert attention, creating a false sense of predictability for potential threats, all while other, more subtle security measures worked in the background. Ethan continued, his tone unwavering. What you see is not what's truly happening. We've been trained to handle every situation that could arise, and our role here isn't just to stand, it's to protect. Mitchell stood there for a moment, his earlier confidence crumbling. He had come here expecting to expose flaws in a system he deemed outdated. Instead, he had uncovered a level of discipline and integration he hadn't anticipated. For the first time, he questioned his assumptions. Maybe the Royal Guard wasn't just ceremonial. Maybe it was exactly what the Tower of London needed. As the tension in the Tower of London courtyard lingered, Captain Mitchell stood in silence, processing what he had just learned. The realization hit him like a wave. His initial assessment of the Royal Guard had been wrong. Ethan Stone had not only proven his discipline, but had revealed the true depth of his role within the security framework. Mitchell had come here expecting to uncover vulnerabilities, expecting to prove that traditional methods were outdated. Instead, he had been shown a level of integration and purpose he hadn't anticipated. Ethan's words echoed in his mind. This position is integrated into a much larger security system. Mitchell had assumed that the immobile guard was a weakness, a target just waiting to be exploited. Yet, it was clear now that the Royal Guard's role was far more sophisticated than it appeared. Ethan's calm, steady presence wasn't an oversight. It was a calculated choice. The guard's stillness was designed to distract, to mislead potential threats into underestimating what was truly happening beneath the surface. The fog had begun to lift as the simulated attack fizzled out, but Mitchell's thoughts remained clouded. He had been so focused on modern tactics, so eager to prove his point, that he had failed to see the bigger picture. The Royal Guard, standing as an unshakable figure at the heart of the Tower of London, was not a relic of the past. It was a carefully orchestrated piece of a much more dynamic security system. Mitchell turned to face Ethan, a mix of frustration and respect in his gaze. "I have to admit," he began, his voice quieter now, "I misjudged you." Ethan didn't respond with pride, nor did he gloat. His expression remained unchanged, but his eyes, sharp, unwavering, spoke volumes. "You were right, Major," Ethan said, his voice steady. "We don't rely on what you see on the surface. Our strength lies in how we integrate with the entire system, how we work behind the scenes to ensure the safety of the crown jewels and the people who rely on us." Mitchell stood still for a moment, absorbing Ethan's words. It wasn't just about one soldier standing at attention. It was about the intricate web of security, about the strategic use of tradition to mask the real threat. The military discipline that had once seemed unnecessary now revealed its tactical value. "What you've shown me," Mitchell said slowly, "is more than just a guard at his post. It's a perfect blend of tradition and modern security. I see now why this works." Ethan nodded, acknowledging Mitchell's shift in understanding. The lesson was clear. In a world where innovation was often the answer, sometimes the most powerful strategy was to blend the old with the new, creating something stronger than either could be alone. For Mitchell, it was a humbling moment, a recognition that even the most entrenched traditions had a place in the future of security. The Royal Guard, it seemed, was far from obsolete. It was, in fact, essential. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's story. What do you think about the balance between tradition and modern security methods? Captain Mitchell initially believed that the Royal Guard's ceremonial role was outdated. But after seeing their true purpose, he realized there was much more to their discipline than he'd ever expected. Do you think traditional security practices, like the Royal Guard, still have a place in today's world? Or do we need to move entirely towards modern approaches? How do you feel about the idea of blending the old with the new to create something even stronger? Let us know where you're watching from, too. We're always fascinated to see how far our stories travel and love hearing from people all over the world. Whether you're a fan of military strategy, history, or just curious about the behind the scenes security systems that keep iconic landmarks safe, we want to hear your perspective. Drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss out on our next exciting story. We appreciate your support, and we can't wait to share more with you. See you tomorrow for another incredible story.